I'm glad I got to be a part of this. When I came in and went to the men's room, the picture was crooked on the wall out here. I straightened it and thought my job was over. But then they said, no, stick around. We want you to introduce a couple of people. I'd like to start by saying that Ed Klein, who was a very important part of our staff, he hasn't passed away, but he's ailing today, and he was supposed to be on the phone with us, and he won't be. I just thought I'd say that up front. Yeah, I talked to him recently, and he said he was feeling fine, but he said a couple of days ago, my speech started to slur. And I said, well, that's probably a Tom Moran syndrome that you have working for you there. No, I know. I got it. But he doesn't slur. Yeah, I get it. I knew I would, but you had to blow it off. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with all of you, and I thank you so much for coming. I don't want to say we're flying by the seat of our pants, but these are my notes. And I don't usually deal with notes at all. But then, no. Usually memos. Yeah, I knew somebody would say that. I was famous for making memos. In fact, I had so many memos at another radio station, WIP, that Tom Moran saved every one of them until the fire marshal came in and said, get rid of them, they're a fire hazard. And it was true. Plus, Tom couldn't see over the staff. We'll get to him later. Anyway, my job here today, I guess, is to introduce some of the people that work for PEN, and there are so many that deserve special treatment. I prided myself only on the fact that I found great talent and hired them if I could. And that's the story of my success, I think, in most cases. And that's why I'm proud of not only WPEN, but WIP, and a few other stations that I won't even mention, including WNEW in New York. But I think probably of all the stations that I worked for, and I worked for a lot, PEN is the one that I'm most proud of because we always had fun. We had a great time, I think. At least that's what they all told me. But then who knows? And the only guy that I never was able to rehire for WPEN's right here, Tom LeMaine. Stand up, Tom. Oh, you are? No, you're not. Every time I see Tom, which was regularly, he mentions that.
I couldn't stand fun.
Oh, I see. That was it. Yeah. Well, it didn't hurt you growing. You know, look at that tan. Is he serious or what? So I'm going to start off with the guy that I probably spend more time with now than I did when he was on the radio. And he said, if you can get me on first, I'd appreciate it. So I'm going to do it. The one and only, oh no, there's only half of one and only. Joe Grady's partner, Ed Hurst. Take your time, Ed. I can vamp until you get up here. I think that it's safe to say that of all the people here in the room or that will be on the show, Ed probably has the longest memory because he's been around at PEN for an awful long time. Whoop. I can handle it. You ready? You right?
Now, the first thing I want to take care of is to tell you that I was a little disappointed that my partner, Joe Grady, and the 950 Club was not mentioned in the release that went out to 500 members. But as Cool Hand Luke's movie said, what we have here is a failure to communicate. I hosted Sunrise Symphony for 1 month in 1946. And my classical music memory was so bad, they replaced me immediately. Anyway, I want to talk briefly about the also glory years of PEN between 1946 and 1955. We had the greatest array of talent in radio in Philly with a signal that after 4:40 in the afternoon, you could not hear us in King of Prussia. But believe me, we were #1 in Camden. But aside from that, and the fact that Grady used to mention the power change every afternoon, there goes our listeners. Also, I can remember in the latter years when we came back, when Dean would send a memo out to all the talent, whatever you do, don't mention old. We're trying to get a younger audience. And Grady, at 5 minutes to 6 of every night, would say, well, they're here to take us back to the home. And I said to him, Joe, you can't do that. I mean, it's not right. Dean sent a memo. He said, screw him, but I like him better than anybody we've ever had as program director. But how about, I don't think there's anybody in this room as old as I am, and I don't think that there are many people who remember Jack O'Reilly, who did Morning Drive. And how about Mac McGuire, Stu Wayne, and the singing disc jockey Bud Breeze, who said to me one day as he threw an ashtray at me, you told Grady what my right name was. I said I had nothing to do with it. I didn't tell him your name was Seymour. But how about our nighttime guys? We really had nighttime locked up with Cal Ross and Steve Allison, who dated every waitress in town. And that was a tip. We also had Bob Horn, believe it or not. He was on PEN. And so was Art Raymond, the man in the black sombrero. Poncho, that's right. How about some of the other names? Well, we had Jules Rind, who did the news and was my roomie for a number of years. Did you know that we also carried the Phillies in 1950 with Gene Kelly and Bill Brundage? Yep, that's what we had on PEN. We also did other sports. I did color on Penn basketball. I was replaced on that in the second year. I lasted 2 years doing Villanova football color. But what was nice, though, they paid me $25 a game, but all I could eat and drink. And in 8 weeks, I gained 23 pounds. We also had a band at PEN, believe it or not. We had a show from 11 to noon every day called The Morning Bouquet of Melody. And we had the band leader from the Bellevue Stratford, whose name was Billy Marshall. But somehow, I don't think it was Grady, it might have been me, who gave him the name, since he weighed 260 pounds, Belly Marshall. I paid for that. Believe me. And of course, we used to sign on when, you know, the Evening Bulletin owned the station first after Art Boulevard. Remember Boulevard Watch Time? Well, they owned PEN. And then they sold the PEN to the Bulletin. And that's when I came in 1946. And later it was sold to Sunray Drug, and oh, they were terrific. They had an angle. They said, if we get the sponsors to leave their products at the Sunray Drug counter, we can bang them into buying time on the station. And we had such interesting products as Medrex. Nobody remembers that. But Al Silk was the guiding Silk brother who ran PEN. But we really had some great fun there, I got to tell you. Also, in that era, I don't know how many of you remember the Translux Theater, which was on Chestnut Street, showed newsreels all day, an hour of newsreels. And we used to feed the Translux every hour. We didn't have a studio for it, so we used the clothes closet. Believe it or not, people were hanging up their clothes or pulling them out as we went on the air. And I had some fun one day with Jules Rind. I deviated from the copy, and I said, little Julie Rind was found unhurt this morning, and we're very happy about it. He ran all the way back to the station at 22nd and Walnut and proceeded to knock me out. But those were just some of the fine things we had at PEN, and believe me, it was a station with great talent, I guess at the height of what radio really was. Of course, we had such general managers and program directors as Murray Arnold, who we used to refer to as the Hummer. And he gave Bill Caskey, the general manager, a very good idea. He said, when Grady and Hurst television contracts are up, don't let them do any more television because they'll be in here asking for more money. Not that the television would help us. And that's when we bought our contract and went to Channel 12. And that's another story I'll tell you sometime. But we're the only talent in America that had a VHF station go educational. Thank you very much. Came here a young man.
Pardon?
He's got his cane right there.
Oh. Pam says he doesn't really need it. It's all an act. I hope so. That's my job these days, you know, chauffeuring Ed around, because he lives in Margate and I live in Brigantine, and I got to do something. And speaking of that, and I want to get to the names of some people that aren't with us today as the period of what I consider the glory days at PEN go on. But it would be less than appropriate if I didn't bring up the next guy right away, because in the middle of that, how should I put it, melee? That's fair enough, of Grady and Hurst, was the one and only and a pacifier unique, Kim Martin. Great pipes and a good guy.
Thank you, Dean. I wear glasses now. I thought that I possibly had been the luckiest person to work in the last 20, 30 years at WPEN because I got to do a little bit of everything. I'm sorry I missed your era, which you talked about a little earlier, but I was concentrating on the Station of the Stars. I actually worked for 4 jobs for Greater Media. I was hired in '76 by Julian Bream, allegedly to work on WMGK. I got there and found out that they needed somebody on WPEN, so I was shifted over there. That, at the time, was WPEN, it was Oldies 95 PEN, that's what it was. Names like, oh gosh, if I can remember some of them, I wrote some of them down here. Every time I hear CBS News, I think of our news department. Also, Lauren Owens, that's what I'm looking for. He was the morning man there, you know, and I think that he was the funniest morning man I ever heard when I got to that station. I came from WIBG, which I worked on under another name. It's really funny. I came in there as Kim Martin, but the Buckley organization at the time thought it sounded too much like Ken Garland and he might get my ratings, so they made me change it to McClintock, which is actually my real name. Jeff Fox, Bobby Mitchell, Brandon Barrett Brooks. I think about that every time I hear him on CBS. He was my newsman there. Labor Day weekend, '79, it went on with Julian Bream. We moved to '78 to Bala 1, and again, I worked for both stations, so I had the privilege of putting I think it was MGK. No, it was PEN first. WPEN, I had the privilege of being the first shift at the new building at Bala 1. And then, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I had the privilege of being the first DJ with the first shift of Magic 103. So actually, I had experience with all these great guys, and especially when I moved back down the hall, that's what I did. I either got fired or canned from one station and the other station picked me up, so I had a motorcycle outside that I went back and forth. But Joe Niagara was on in the morning, Andy Hopkins, Tom Moran was there, Bill Kimball, Jerry Stevens, Ed Hurst, Joe Grady, Bill Weber, Dick Clayton, who I thought was fantastic, Ken Garland, and of course Elaine Soncini. Great people to work with, friends all. And that began the Station of the Stars. And the things I remember most about that is the fun we had when we used to go to Penn's Landing and do the concerts. That was absolutely fantastic. We had Al Raymond, the PEN Big Band. And then later on, I was lucky enough to get on the list of hosting shows at Valley Forge Music Fair, which broke my heart when that closed. And I got to know Johnny Mathis, and also Peggy Lee. Funny story about Peggy Lee, when I was out there with Grady and Hurst, her manager came to me and said, Miss Lee would like you to introduce her. And I thought, well, okay. And he said, this might lead to something, so be very careful. I said, okay. So I went up to the booth in the balcony. I didn't do it on the stage. And when it was time, they gave me the signal. I said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peggy Lee. And there was a big thunderous applause, absolutely nothing. And the guy looked at me and he shook his head. I said, ladies and gentlemen, Peggy Lee. And they clapped again. And finally, after standing there like a dunce wondering what I did wrong or where she was, a guy came up to me and said, you screwed up? I said, why? He said, try Miss Peggy Lee. I said, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Peggy Lee, and out she came. And that probably screwed me up being her on-the-road announcer. But it was a great time between all the stations. And I even got, after we went back to rock and roll with, Charlie Bennett, Christy Springfield, Jim Nettleton was there. And I got to mention Jerry Blavitt. We had him on, and of course we had the Phillies on there for a couple of years. But after they went from the Station of the Stars back to rock and roll for, what, Dean, about a year? Abbreviated, 2 years. I was lucky enough to hang in another year and work with those guys. So it was a tremendous time in my life that I worked with all the FM people, all the AM people. I worked for different program directors, the longest possibly, the guy sitting right here, and station manager, I might add. But it was great for me. It was a wonderful station. I'm glad I got to say my piece about it, and thank you very much.
What pipes, huh? That's what I said, pipes. That works too. As we go along here, I may mention a few other names that aren't with us because they aren't with us anymore, and I want to make sure that they get a mention or two. So I might as well throw one or two in here now while one of the old men of the group works his way up here. Where's Bob Craig? He's one of the younger guys, really. I was facetious. Ken Garland, you've heard mentioned several times already. Art Andrews, Glenn Barton, great newsman, and talk about great voice. There it is. What happened to Bob Craig? He went and sat there. Oh, no, I'm just vamping while you come up. Yeah. Don't feel sad that you're shorter than I am. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. You're right. Very good, Andy. I appreciate that, Bob. Welcome, Bob Craig, from not only PEN, but WMGK. He worked both sides of the street. Some for me, but not too much.
No, well, actually, Dean and I go back about 40 years. Dean had an opening for an assistant PD at WIP, and Bill St. James, you remember Bill St. James at WIP, he and I had worked together at WDRC in Hartford, and he was about 19 when Dean picked him up and brought him down here, and about a year later, Bill said to me, hey, so Dean's got an opening for an assistant PD. I think you'd be good for the job. Why don't you come on down? I came down for 2 interviews. I thought, well, maybe I have the job. Didn't. Dean sends me a letter back. And the essence of it was, well, in this business, maybe someday, who knows? So Dean, as I'm sure a lot of you know, came to PEN around 1983. And when Dean came, let me just backtrack for a minute here. I came down from Hartford, eventually in '79 to program WMGK. And at the time, PEN was really kind of disorganized. Some of you may remember what they were doing at the time. It was a combination of some oldies, and then eventually they trickled over to somewhat of a nostalgia station. There was a fellow brought in named Joe Taylor. Remember Joe Taylor, Kim? Joe Taylor was PD for about 17 minutes, I think. But he really didn't have a grasp on what he was doing, and I was programming MGK at this point. And we had a successful run at MGK, and Greater Media decided they really wanted to beef up PEN, realizing there was great value in the music of playing Tony Bennett, Sinatra, and those guys. And for some reason or other, Julian Breen, whose name was mentioned before, who was the programming honcho at Greater Media, said, hey, we're looking at Dean Tyler to program the station. I said, geez, I said, that'd be a great move, what he did at WIP, even though he turned me down for a job one time at WIP, that's all right. So eventually Dean came in, and the rest is really kind of history because the station really took off. It was the right thing at the right time, and then bringing Grady and Hurst in, which was supposed to be for what, a week. Yeah, I think a week or 2 weeks, the trial. And the phones just went crazy. I mean, the letters and the enthusiasm for Grady and Hurst back on the radio. So we never saw anything like this at MGK. We had huge ratings at MGK, but we never had that kind of a response. So thankfully, Grady and Hurst came, and then some other wonderful hires that Dean made through the years. And I was kind of always in the background of PEN because I always kind of liked the music, although we were programming soft rock at MGK. And eventually my years at MGK came to an end after about 10, and I eventually wound up finally working for Dean Tyler, finally in 1992. And unfortunately, I was the guy, and it's the second time I've done this in my career, which, you know, I was thinking about all the people we're talking about here, Dean. There's about 400 years of radio experience, huh? And Ed Hurst accounts for half of those years right there. But seriously, I had the distinction of putting the station to bed in September of 2004. I don't know why, but I was the last one on the air there. I think you were on the phone with me, Dean, or you were in the studio when we called. I can't remember exactly what it was. All I know is it was a really sad day when you're putting together a legendary radio station and putting it to bed, and realize the memories not only from the Dean Tyler run for about 20 years, but also the people and the format and the ideas behind PEN that Ed was talking about from the 40s. I mean, how many radio stations exist for that long doing a similar kind of format? So I guess in essence, I'm really happy to say that I was part of that radio station. It wasn't in the glory years, but as things began to trickle down in the 90s, we were able to see that the audience was fading away and Greater Media was not having that much enthusiasm about running the radio station the way it did during Dean's run. So I wound up programming and was kind of a glorified program director in the final days of it, and then the decision was made to go oldies, and that lasted a year, and then we went to sports, and it's religion now, I believe, but it's still at 950, somewhere along the way.
The Station of the Cross.
The Station of the Cross. Very good, Andy. Station of the Cross. Do they really, are you serious? Is that right? What an idea for a religious radio station, though. Yeah. So anyhow, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and for Dean for inviting us, and to Jerry for inviting me as well. And I believe we have some more people to talk. Dean?
One of the finest men in broadcasting ever, Bob Craig. Wonderful guy and a great programmer. He did a lot of things for MGK that other people wished they had done. He was very, and I miss him. I don't get to talk to him that much. I get to talk to Tom LeMaine now and then. He waves to me from across the channel there, because he's got a. Did they know that you're living basically in the house you were born in, except they've rebuilt it? Same lot. Same lot. Okay. He was born on a vacant lot. Who said that? Guess who? Okay, now we're going to go to the feminine side of things for a few minutes, I think. You ready? Okay. Is that her?
Hi there.
Oh, Elaine Soncini, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everybody. How I wish I were there. I've been waiting for this day.
Oh, I'm supposed to talk to her? I hardly ever do that except every other 2 weeks.
I know we do. You must be having a wonderful time. I think about you and everybody on that panel just about every single day, and I really miss the days of WPEN.
I know you do. Are you okay? You were choking there for a moment.
No, I was laughing. I was laughing. No, and how long has the luncheon been going on?
What day is it?
You got 2 minutes.
I think that's funny.
You got 2 minutes to say anything you want.
All right, just that I'm just so grateful for the time I spent at WPEN, and I can't believe I worked with the icons of the industry, that's for sure. The people I listened to, I was actually working with. They taught me while I was on the air, and Dean, we did more than radio together. We did life together, all of us, marriages and divorces and anniversaries and births and illnesses, and that was the greatest part of the team that we had. It's just an amazing and unique fraternity, and I just feel truly blessed every day that I had that opportunity.
Well, this is one of the great ladies of radio as far as I'm concerned, and I've worked with some real fine ones. Sue Serio, who you all know from the Fox channel here as a weather lady. And I guess one of my biggest pride and joys is that I heard about somebody up in Boston, and I made an excursion. Bob, I think you went with me on that, didn't you? Was it Bob Craig that made the trip with me? You didn't go to Boston? Who was it? Somebody looked like you. No. Anyway, I discovered, for my purposes, Delilah. And
oh, of course.
What's that?
I said, of course. She's just an amazing broadcaster. She's national, my goodness.
Yep, that's what she always wanted. And I would have made you national, too, but you wouldn't let me because you loved Philadelphia that much, and Ken.
I didn't want to leave. Didn't want to leave any of it, and I miss Philadelphia every single day. What I have here right now in Florida is hot and muggy and buggy. We've got about 11 billion bugs down here, so I've got a lot of work to do.
Well, it's hot and muggy here, too, so stay where you are, because it's a lot nicer there. Oh, I shouldn't say that in front of a Philadelphia crowd.
Well, you just have a wonderful luncheon, and thank you so much for making me a part of it, and I just wish that we could somehow recreate it all over again, but I certainly appreciated what we have. It's lifetime friends.
Thank you, Elaine.
All right, take care, be well.
Elaine Sancini, ladies and gentlemen. Elaine and I remain very close, as close as my wife will allow me, because we talk every couple of weeks on the phone, and I know that in her heart she's still in Philadelphia, even though she lives in sunny Florida with her husband. And I've been there. Nice digs. I don't know why they're interested in coming back here. If they move any farther south, I certainly hope it's to Key West, because I end up I'm going to end up being down there before I die, too. I love it. Okay, moving right along. Here's a gentleman that speaks well for several radio stations, not the least of which would be WIBG and WPEN, and several that he'll probably mention in the course of his time up here, Mr. Bill Wright, Sr. Bill Wright's the only guy that has the distinction of being allowed to call me by my real first name, Dudley. You're not on yet. There you go.
Dudley Tyler Finch.
There you go.
Yeah. Good afternoon, fellow broadcasters and friends. I am privileged to have been a part, although for a short time of my 71 years in broadcasting, a short time at PEN, but a most rewarding time. Dean called me in about 1990, and I had struggled for many, many years with Jack Daniels, and it had its way with me. But in 1988, I found Alcoholics Anonymous, and it saved my life. "26 years and change of sobriety ain't no bad deal at all," and that's only part of the reason that I'm still here at age 85. My career started in my hometown of Birmingham when I, on crutches, because I had had osteomyelitis, a bone disease, and for 4 years I walked on crutches and rode one of these. And my mother said, "Get in the car, Bill." And I said, "Where are we going, Mom?" She said, "We're going, I'll tell you when we get there." So we go down and get on an elevator in a high rise, and the door opened, and it said, "WAPI, the voice of Alabama." And I thought, what are we doing here, Mama? I'm 14. She said, "Is Mr. Reuben Martinson here?" "Yes." "Well, we have an appointment." So this charming man, charming fella with long hair, artistic, comes out and he said, "Hello, Mrs. Wright. This must be Billy. Billy, you're here to audition." And I said, "I am?" And so we go into the studio, and my mother sits down at the piano immediately and starts playing an Irish song. And there was nothing left for old Billy to do but to sing it. And I sang "Irish Eyes Are Smiling" and "Peggy O'Neill." And Reuben said, "That's terrific, Bill." He said, "We'd like for you to join our Sears and Roebuck Youth and Melody Chorus. We pay $1 a week, and when you sing a solo, we give you another $1. You don't think I didn't have a solo prepared every week. I mean, in those days, in 1943, a pack of Luckies was 20 cents or less. Anyway, that was the beginning of my broadcast career, because one night on the show, I asked Reuben Martinson, he said, I said, "May I dedicate this to my grandmother?" And he said, "Sure." So the first words that I ever spoke on the air 71 years ago was, "I'd like to sing this Irish song for my Mamie Carney out in Inglenook." And I proceeded to sing this song, and she was all in tears. But anyway, that really started my on-air. But let's skip on up to, because I think Kim Martin had mentioned the Valley Forge Music Fair as part of the itinerary at WPEN, and that was a great one. Shelley Gross invited us to MC all of the shows, as many as we cared to. And this particular year, they had Rosie Clooney, my dear heart, Anne Murray, Harry Belafonte. So I selected the 3 of those shows, and I go out, and Anne Murray was the first one. And we're sitting in the dressing room. I love to tell this. And Anne Murray, a charming Canadian lady, I said, you know, the thing that I enjoy the most about you, Anne, is that I've never heard you sing a flat note. She looked me in the face and said, I know. Talk about confidence. Well, anyway, those shows went well. My shows went very well at WPEN until the Rotten Phillies came along and took my show right out from under me. You'll remember that day, Bob Craig. But anyway, I loved WPEN, and I was, of course, surrounded by some of the Wibbage alumni, Joe Niagara and Dean and Jerry Stevens, and we had a ball at that radio station. And the program that I did at the library just about a month ago, I termed it the language of the heart. That's what we always had at WPEN, and I am very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That was wonderful. Now, I think we've probably covered all these names, but I would feel that I hadn't done my job if I didn't mention Dick Clayton, Jay Lamont. Now, he was not in the music industry, but he sure made a lot of money for WPEN as a real estate expert, and he's still out there kicking. Unfortunately, his wife passed away just recently out in California, but Jay is still... Who? Oh, Fred Sherman.
I used to do his show and he wanted me to make people lose 15%.
Yeah, right. I think Bill Kimball was mentioned. Bill Weber, certainly, bigger than life. And Joe Niagara, one of my all-time favorites. I still talk to his wife, Evelyn, every couple of weeks. And if I don't call her, she calls me. And it always brings me up because she is such an upbeat person and still loves to play poker down at the casinos in Atlantic City. So I'm more than willing to show for her anytime she wants. 'Cause I don't know how many of you know this, but my wife is a host at Borgata. And so if you're ever in Borgata and you have a problem, ask for Mary Lou. They all know her. She's been there since before they opened. She's the only person I know that went from crooked broadcasting to more crooked gambling. But one day she came to me and said, you know, you're right, radio's not fun anymore, I'm going to get another job. And I said, well, there's a casino about to open. And she said, oh, maybe I'll try out. And I said, well, I applied. They said I was overqualified. Next day they hired her, and she's been there since before they opened and is still there today. And I'm just hoping that she holds on for a little longer because, you know, I got to have somebody to support me. Speaking of supporting, yeah. Oh, no, I got them. You're right. I think I mentioned, no, maybe I didn't. Glenn Barton, Art Andrews, very important to that staff. And, of course, Elaine Soncini was the news director. So for somebody that people thought of as just a frivolous broadcasting broad, she developed a news department that did great things. That's okay.
She's still on the line.
That's all right. Elaine and I are that tight. And she would be sorry if I didn't call her a broadcasting broad. What's that, Ed?
Don't forget
Emily Elfenbein, one of the smartest ladies I've ever met. And then, of course, there's Tom Moran. Are you going to talk today, Tom, or not? You want to come up and say hi? A little birdie, the typical birdie, told me that he really didn't want to talk today, but I think we've coerced him into it. And he's shorter than I am. How you doing, buddy? You all right?
Hello, you. I was just about done with my introduction on November the 22nd.
Right. First of the year.
At a major event in my life. And I had two colleagues, Tom Moran and Kevin Moran, who bailed me out as I was faking a stroke. So I really do appreciate the people that came that night and are here today. Thank you all very much, and I love you. Beat the band.
They don't get any better than that. Tom Moran. Before we go to the telephone for another outside call-in from somebody also in Florida, I guess they're rubbing it in that they're in Florida and we're up here. I'm not sure. But there are some other people that need to be recognized. I want to get back to the fact that what we were able to do at PEN was very special. And it was because of the people that worked there. It wasn't me. I got a lot of accolades for it. But they were just such a great team. The only one I never got was Tom LeMay. He was too expensive at that time. We tried to put him in the morning show doing the weather, and what was it, Channel 3? Wouldn't let him do it except if he got a lot of money. And I said, well, there's no chance here. That's for damn sure. But we... but we missed him. And, but it is just, those were the golden days of radio, and they were particularly golden for WPEN. And I happened to land in the right place at the right time. In fact, when I took the job, because of Julian Breen and the then general manager who I ultimately replaced, Larry, what was his name, Wexler. I started to say Larry Mullen, but it's Larry Wexler. I would have gone to Gannett, where Jay Cook, my major adversary, right? And also one of my best friends was working, and he wanted me to come join him. So I called him up and said, I can't. I've already taken a job from Larry Wexler. And he said, oh, that silver-tongued devil. I'll never forget it. And it worked out fine for me, except whenever it rained, I'd go into his office and say, you see what you did to me? I'm stuck in Philadelphia. I could be in sunny California right now. But anyway, that's all history, and I'm glad I was there for it. And I'm especially glad when I get to talk to people that we used to work together and find out that I wasn't quite as much of an ogre as they used to say I was. We're going to go to the phones one more time, and then we'll get our final up here. How in the hell did I put him last? Oh, hello,
That's
Walt
the story
MacDonald.
of my life.
Walt MacDonald.
That's the story of my life. I'm always last.
No, you're not last. I've got somebody after
Hey.
you.
Listen, Dean, I never considered you an ogre.
Well,
You were the best person there was at WPEN next to Larry Wexler.
okay, that's it. You got even with me.
At least you topped Peter Markover.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that.
I go back to when Joe Grady was program director at WPEN when the $5,000 walk-up.
But wait a minute. When I was program director at WIP, didn't you go do the Go Patrol there, too?
I did the Go Patrol there, and then Grady hired me to do the Saturday night NBC Monitor, And then I had the music show the next morning at 6 a.m. And all I did was just push the button to open the microphone because the music director had all the records planned and everything.
Yeah, I don't like that format. I hate the push the button and let it play.
And then,
Anyway,
of course, we did the Go Patrol there for a long, long time, Atlantic Go Patrol, and then Atlantic turned over the service to the AMP and Mini Market Division. Then we were called the ARCO AMP and Mini Go Patrol for many years. And, of course, being associated with WPEN, the morning crew with Art Andrews and Elaine Soncini and the lovable Ken Garland. I mean, I had so many friends who listened to WPEN both in the morning and afternoon along with Joe Niagara. I had a great time at WPN attending all their functions, the Leukemia-thon, and so on.
well, I know that when I come down to the Florida area, we don't stay anywhere near you. We'll head on down to Key West. But there are an awful lot of Philadelphia retirees in that area. It's amazing.
There certainly are.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
Pardon?
Well, actually, I'm still working. I'm working at WPLG TV. I do their helicopter video reports for fires and so on.
So you're a success all over again in another market.
Well, I'm a legend in my own mind.
Well, it's great talking to you, Walt, and thank you so much for being a part of this today, because you certainly were a big part of the traffic reporting in this Philadelphia region, and particularly at WPEN.
Thank you very much. And, Dean, I have your picture right below Larry's.
Thank you, Walt.
I'll see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, before we wrap up, you may be here until dark, because this guy just can't shut up. I'm going to bring up Andy Kortman, who I replaced myself with when I retired from the morning show, in addition to my management responsibilities. They really took advantage of me at Greater Media. I don't know why I love them so. Andy Kortman, get your you-know-what up here. What do you think you are? Michael, what's his name?
I dress
Charlie
like Charlie Sheen
Yeah,
just for
exactly.
you. And not for anything. You're starting to look like your favorite actor with the black glasses and the white hair. Spencer Tracy. No, doesn't he? Ed, are you leaving?
Yeah, unfortunately, nature calls.
Oh. Well, before you go, there was one name that was not mentioned. Hi, John Carlton here. Missed him. And Rick Anthony and Bob Roth, also known as Baba Roth, yeah. I don't know where to start. Your beginning or my beginning? We don't have that much time. Dean mentioned something when he first got up here about picking the right people. And that's the one thing that always sticks out when I think of Dean. He picked the right people for the job, and then he got out of their way, and he let them do what it is they do. And you really didn't hear from him unless some major infraction, and of course, then you got a memo. One of my earliest memories at PEN, I joined the station on Memorial Day weekend in 1988. And originally, I had worked for MGK one shift. Bob Craig brought me into Greater Media to work at MGK. I did one shift, and that was like the Saturday night, Sunday morning of Memorial Day weekend that year, 88. And then I guess it was Monday or Tuesday of the week, I got a call from Dot McBlain. And she said, she left me a message. She said, Dean Tyler would like you to call him when you get in. And I was, I did the Jackie Gleason, Amina. I wanted to work at PEN for so long. I listened to Grady and Hurst during their second incarnation in the 80s. The car I had at the time had only an AM radio, so I used to listen to these guys. And of course, growing up, I listened to Ken Garland and Wee Willie and Tom Moran, all these guys. And I never thinking all these years later I'd actually get to work with him. But one of my fondest memories, one of my first memories when I joined PEN was the very first function we had when I was there. Do you remember when they revamped the old Campbell Soup building in Camden? They called it the Show Place, right? And they were going to have all kinds of events there. So we had an event there. I brought my mother because she listened to Ken for years. I remember riding in the car listening to Ken. So I said, I know my mom's going to want to meet Ken. So I bring my mother to the first function that I attended as a PEN employee. And Ken was sitting in the most remote corner of the room, as he always did. So I walked up and I said, hi, Ken. My mother's a big fan. I wanted her to meet you. And he looked at my mother and he said, this belongs to you? Quintessential Ken Garland. A lot of memories, but and there's something, I wanted Ed to be here for this, but the one thing I will say is that in public, you try to get with these guys. We get together for lunch all the time, and after a couple of Jack Daniels, people start getting mellow. You feel a little more comfortable talking about some things. The years go by, and I realized that I peaked early because WPEN, for me, is as good as it's ever going to get. I joined sort of in the final years of when radio really was radio. I got to see how it was done the right way by people. I'm an asterisk in the history of WPEN compared to these guys, but the one thing I will say to you, Dean, I'll never forgive you. I feel like Carson up here. These things are bombing. But no, I couldn't have more respect or admiration for Dean Tyler. I know. It really is bad. And I got to work with all you legends. And again, it's as good as it's ever going to get for me, and I was glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Before we sign this off, I've got to mention, as I was reminded a couple of times, that at 2212, where is it? Walnut Street, there's still a WPEN sign, and the city is still lighting it at night. And PEN, as such, does not exist anymore, but it's kind of nice that they still have the sign up. Also, I'm asked to mention the Frank Ford Show, which was before my time, but it was a hell of a show, I know. And a couple of the members of the crowd that used to go there, would you stand up? My memory was that he was always asking me for a job, and I never hired him. Wasn't right. Didn't happen at the right time. Red Benson, another. I do remember Red Benson, but that was before I got it. I was going to be a veterinarian, by the way. That's what I was studying in college. And I got the bug to do some radio, and it worked out. And so I just kept going and growing. And it's been the greatest thing in my life because I made a living at it. But more importantly, I was there in the really good years. And I think everybody that worked in the industry, be it at PEN or elsewhere, would admit that those were the glory days, and they were great. And TL, you're still on the air, right? Down at the shore on WOND. What is it, every Sunday or?
First Sunday I'm retired.
I've heard that, but I haven't seen it yet because you're always at everything. Anyway, there is still some good radio out there, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And I want to thank you all for being here today.